Hi, this is Jitesh Satyan. WhatsApp number +91 965 6611 829. So we start with the narration of the story. So the story narrated by Hemalekha. Hemalekha says that her mother once gave her a companion who was good by nature. Then she says, this friend of mine later picked up friendship with a lady named Shunya. This new person called Shunya was capable of creating new and fascinating things. Shunya introduced my friend to her son, named Mood, who was a fool and a drunkard. Okay, so now let's analyze the story. So Hemalekha says that her mother once gave her a companion who was good by nature. The mother of Hemalekha is supreme consciousness, pure consciousness in a supreme all-encompassing nature. And Hemalekha is individual consciousness, pure consciousness in limited finite nature. The companion given to individual consciousness is Buddhi, Mahat Tattva. So as explained in manifestation, initially Buddhi is mere presentation or it's only presentation and it is pure. The friend or companion of Hemalekha later picked up friendship with a lady named Shunya. Based on the key provided in the scripture in chapter 8, we find that Shunya is avidya or individual level ignorance. This new person called Shunya is said to be capable of creating new and fascinating things. Avidya, which is Maya's concealing power at individual level, causes tossing of thoughts or vikshepa. The capability of avidya to bombard an individual continuously with streams of thought, new and fascinating, is presented as a characteristic of Shunya. So avidya is called Shunya or zero value in the story because it is an illusionary veil or cover of Maya. That is let's say a black light is kept below a transparent crystal. It causes the crystal to look black. The black color itself is not the real characteristic of the crystal. Similarly, Maya, like the black light, makes pure consciousness, the transparent crystal, appear as limited or ignorant of true self. So, avidya, crystal appearing as black. And the black color of crystal, avidya, is really not part of the crystal, and hence avidya is named Shunya. The individual consciousness remains pure like supreme consciousness. Ignorance of self or true nature, that ignorance which is called Shunya, then introduces Buddhi, Hemalekha's friend, to her son named Mood, who was a fool and a drunkard. Mood is Ahankara as negative ego or mistaken identity. The term mood in Sanskrit means fool. Mood, Ahankara is a fool because it is giving a false identity or incorrect identity to the individual where the real I is concealed. It is a drunkard because this mistaken identity causes actions which are devoid of correct reasoning. Ahankara, as a limited I, is the cause of all materialistic actions intended to benefit the false ego or false identity. In this talk, we continue with the story narrated by Hemalekha. Hemalekha says that her friend started having a relationship with Mood, and later they had a son named Astir. So the kid inherited the dull nature of his father and the creative and wicked nature of his grandmother. Under the training of his father and grandmother, Astir became a very skilled person. Astir could overcome any difficult situations with ease. So Hemalekha says that her friend began to change due to association with these wicked people. She started loving them and had very little time to spend with Hemalekha. However, Hemalekha never left them. Okay, now let's try to analyze it. So Hemalekha says, my friend started having a relationship with Mood and later they had a son named Astir. So as we discussed in the earlier talk, the false identity created by Ahankara, Mood on Buddhi, which is Hemalekha's friend, produces the third product in individual manifestation, which is Manas. Mana meaning mind that desires to enjoy. The product mind is termed Astir, or the son is termed as Astir, which corresponds to mind, meaning unstable in Sanskrit. Astir meaning unstable because of the unstable nature of the mind, which is always analyzing options and never steady due to ignorance. Next, the characteristics of the mind are discussed in the story. The story mentions that Astir inherited the dull nature of his father and the creative and wicked nature of his grandmother. Under the training of his father and grandmother, Astir became a very skilled person and he could overcome any difficult situation with ease. Mind is mostly dull or tries to avoid spiritual focused thoughts. Mind is creative in finding solution to problems and wicked in mostly seeking personal benefit at the expense of harm or trouble to others. Mind thus has several positive traits like creativity and skill to solve issues, but puts these skills mostly for dull and wicked purposes aligned to materialistic benefits. Hemalekha continues her narration by saying that her friend began to change due to association with this people. Though Hemalekha's friend spent very little time with her, still Hemalekha did not leave her. The intellect, Buddhi, Hemalekha's friend, is now shown as completely engaged with the unstable mind, Astir, and the erroneous perception of true nature resulting from association with ignorance, Shunya, and its product, which is egocentricity, mood. Being completely engaged with mind clouded by ignorance, most of the time is spent on materialistic activities and very little on spiritual activities which reveal the true nature. So it shows how the mind, which is clouded by ignorance, behaves. However, the pure nature of individual consciousness continues to exist, which is shown as Hemalekha still continuing with them. So individual consciousness continues to exist even when the intellect is clouded by ignorance. In this talk, we continue with the story narrated by Hemalekha. So in the story, Hemalekha says that people started saying bad things about her in the community as they believed Mood was controlling her, even though she remained pure. Later, Astir married Chapala with the consent of his mother. Chapala was always active. She was willing to change forms and environment to keep her husband happy. Okay, now let's analyze. So Hemalekha says that people started saying bad things about her in the community as they believed Mood was controlling her, even though she remained pure. So the author is trying to convey the classic example of superimposition that results from ignorance. It is mostly explained with the rope snake example in Vedic and Tantric scriptures. The analogy involves a rope that is mistaken as a snake due to limited visibility. Only a person with good visibility from proper lighting recognizes the rope in its true nature, while a person with limited visibility mistakes the rope to be a snake. Hence, the nature or characteristics of the snake are superimposed on the rope, while in reality the rope does not have any venom. Similarly, individual consciousness remains untainted by the association of buddhi with erroneous perception of limitedness caused by ignorance. So individual consciousness still remains pure, like I, Hemalekha. and the egocentricity of limitedness, finitude from negative ahankara and its source ignorance does not affect individual consciousness. The moment buddhi leaves the company of erroneous perception and marries knowledge of wisdom, the true nature is revealed. So, the false perception about the nature of consciousness is only a superimposition, and only wise people are aware of the same. The same is explained in the story by saying about how Hemaleka is mistaken by people in the community who believe that she is controlled by mood, and that she may not be pure, though she remained pure always, as individual consciousness remaining pure. A person who is not enlightened is unable to see this inner purity and hence blames Hemaleka as being under the control of mood. It is important to note that the rope snake example is only an analogy. There has been multiple debates between philosophers on this example, suggesting that rope and snake have similarities which cause superimposition, while the same cannot be applied in the context of superimposition due to ignorance. Counter arguments are given by quoting other examples like space appearing as blue, while in essence space is colorless. Akasha as blue, while Akasha is actually colorless. And these similarities in space and blue, but yet there is false superimposition. So the blue color is attributed to space while space is colorless. So rope snake example is only an analogy to show superimposition and not necessarily proof for superimposition. Vedic quotes are used from the standpoint of proof for superimposition resulting in ignorance being a nature of self. Okay. So later in the story we see that Astir married Chabala with the consent of his mother. So Chabala, based on the earlier discussion where we actually mapped Chabala to the inner meaning based on chapter 8, Chabala means, from a Sanskrit perspective, means always changing, fleeting, and this character is identified as thoughts or imagination, kalpana, in chapter 8 of Tripura Rahasya. The message here is that mind is always engaged in thoughts. Thoughts are fleeting in nature, one after the other, one followed by the other, and this changing nature of thought is communicated in the name of the character. The story mentions that Chabala is always active and willing to change forms and environment to keep her husband happy. The reference here is to the tossing of thoughts and the changing thoughts to keep the mind engaged. In this talk, we continue with the story narrated by Hemaleka. Hemaleka says that Chabala gave birth to 5 sons who were devoted to their parents. And Hemaleka took care of these 5 sons as well. Okay, now let's analyze. So Chabala gave birth to 5 sons who were devoted to their parents. According to chapter 8 of Tripura Rahasya, the 5 sons are the 5 sensory inputs: hearing, taste, sight, touch and smell. Hemaleka says that she took care of the 5 sons as well, brought them up. Though some teachers consider Tripura Rahasya as an Advaita Vedanta text, it is statements like this. This is being just one among several other events in the scripture, which brings out why Tripura Rahasya is aligned to Tantric philosophy rather than Advaita Vedanta philosophy. So there is a recent trend to interpret most of the even Tantric works using Advaita Vedanta philosophy, which mostly results in incorrect interpretations, because all scripture should be interpreted in light of the specific philosophy based on which it was written. Okay, so we look at why it is more aligned to the Tantric philosophy rather than the Advaita Vedanta philosophy. So in Advaita Vedanta, the true self is not a doer and will not participate. Na karta na bhokta is the nature of self, or the true self is not a doer and will not participate in Advaita Vedanta. The Brahman, Atman in Advaita Vedanta pervades the states of consciousness and pervades the body, but it only lends existence to body and states. The Brahman or Atman of Advaita Vedanta does not get affected by the states of consciousness or get engaged in it, whether it is waking, dreaming, or sleeping. Anything changing or acting is not Brahman or Atman according to Advaita Vedanta. So Brahman does not change, does not act. Na karta, na bhokta. However, this story has multiple instances where Hemalekha, I, individual consciousness, takes care of others, brings up, looks after, helps in growing, helping in becoming strong, and there is even mentioned reflects the moods of her friend and friend's family. So the I in this story does not satisfy the requirements of self in Advaita Vedanta. The I in the story is a composite of Purusha and Prakriti, where one is power of the other and not separate from it. I in the story actively participates for the well-being and still remains pure and untainted. So the I in the story can be interpreted using non-dualistic, qualified monistic and dualistic approach. However, even when interpreting using non-dualistic approach, the I in the story would not meet the requirements of Atman in Advaita Vedanta. It is important to note that the concept of erroneous perception of self due to ignorance is accepted by all Vedantic philosophies and Tantric philosophies that accept the Vedas. So, presence of ignorance is accepted. The difference is only in what is the level of superimposition accepted by the different philosophies. So, we look at a brief comparison in order to understand the different aspects of superimposition or erroneous perception, and look at how each philosophy, some of the philosophies actually look into it. Okay, so types of superimposition, let's say 3 types of superimposition we will actually look into. One is I as finite and mortal. Second, I as doer or karta. Third, I as the experiencer or bhokta. I corresponding to individual consciousness or Atman. Okay, so according to Sankhya philosophy, Yoga philosophy, Nyaya philosophy, Tripura Siddhanta philosophy, Advaita Vedanta philosophy, as well as Para Advaita or Kashmir Shaivism, they all disagree on I am finite or mortal. So they all believe that I, the individual consciousness, is infinite. Okay, so now the main argument seems to be about karta and bhokta. So Sankhya philosophy disagrees to the opinion that I is a doer, but it agrees to the opinion that I is the experiencer. Yoga philosophy also disagrees to I as the doer and agrees to I as the experiencer. Nyaya philosophy, it agrees to both karta and bhokta. It agrees that I am the doer and I am the experiencer or enjoyer. Tripura Siddhanta, this also has the same opinion like Nyaya philosophy. It agrees that I am the doer and I am the experiencer. Both karta and bhokta is accepted. Advaita Vedanta disagrees to I am the doer and I am the experiencer. So it says na karta na bhokta. Okay, now coming to Para Advaita, as in like most of the Kashmir Shaivism approach. This also is in line with Tripura Siddhanta. It agrees I am the doer, karta, and I am the experiencer, bhokta. So most philosophies that accept Vedas agree on the limitedness or finitude or bondage being a wrong perception or superimposition on individual consciousness, leading to methods to get release from the wrong perception or bondage to attain moksha, though conflicting views exist on other levels of superimposition. We continue with the story narrated by Hemalekha. Story. Hemalekha says that after growing up, the 5 sons of Chabala constructed beautiful houses with the help of their mother. The sons captivated their father, and the father had to move from one house to another. Okay, so let's analyze this part. So we are saying about 5 sons after the growing up constructing houses, and how with the help of their mother the sons are able to captivate their father. So the houses are identified as the 5 sense organs in chapter 8 of Tripura Rahasya. A bit of theory on the working of the mind, thoughts and senses in Tantric philosophy will help to appreciate what comes next on how Astir is captivated in the house of his 5 sons. We already mentioned that according to Tantric philosophy, manifestation is the result of desire. So mind, manas, helps the jiva, individual consciousness, fulfill the desire, ichha. Next, at individual level, there is a requirement to take action to satisfy the desire, the action being the kriya, and makes the jiva know about the results of action, the knowledge itself being the jnana. So the 3 Shaktis, Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti operate at individual level as well. We already discussed about Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti during manifestation and its role in the pure category. So it also has a role in the individual category, as above, so below, cosmic macrocosm and individual microcosm, or cosmic consciousness and individual consciousness. So mind needs an instrument or object to perform action and to take input or knowledge to satisfy the desire. The instruments are the sense organs. Sensations produced due to association with external objects are experienced by jiva using the sense organs. The sense is not the physical organ, the sense itself, but the mind operating through that organ to experience the world. For the mind to build an experience from a specific sensory input, there needs to be perceptions called tanmatras in Sanskrit. So there is 5 tanmatras. This tanmatras itself needs to be general in order to create the multitude of variations. So mind, to build an experience of sensory input, a set of general abstractions needs to be available, which can create multiple variations based on the specific context. So these generals are the abstract sensory perceptions called tanmatras. The 5 tanmatras are sound tanmatra, shabda tanmatra, touch and feel, which is sparsha tanmatra, color and form, which is rupa tanmatra, taste of flavor is rasa tanmatra, and smell or odor is gandha tanmatra. The 5 senses are the 5 sons that lead Astir, the mind, to the variety of experience in their houses, which are the sense organs. So the experience or the sense is not possible with the sense organs and the mind alone. As mentioned in the story, we see that with the help of their mother, Chabala, the sons captivated their father, Astir. So experience is not possible unless attention, Chabala, the thought, cooperates. If a person is lost in thoughts, that is, he is absent-minded, then he or she will be ignoring sensory inputs or unaware of what is happening around. Also, sensations are bombarded from the different organs, and a selection mechanism along with processing is to be done to create an experience. So, inputs are selected one after the other and processed to create a combined experience. So, as mentioned in the story, the sons of Astir took him to different houses with the help of their mother. We continue with the story narrated by Hemalekha. Story. So Hemalekha says that one day Astir visited the house of his eldest son. There he heard sweet music from hymns from scriptures and sound of ornaments, all of which made him very happy. Then he heard harsh, dreadful sounds like roar of lion, thunder and lightning, crying sounds which were painful. Astar thus had a fair share of pleasure and pain staying in the house of the eldest son. Next, the second son called Astar to his house. Second son gave his father soft cushion to sit, a luxurious bed, and warm clothes. In this house, the father experienced different sensations like hard and soft, cool and warmth. So Astar was happy when he received sensations he liked, and he actually felt miserable when he received things that he disliked. Astir then went to his third son's house. There he saw different colors: white, yellow, brown, things which are big and things which are small in different shapes and forms. The things that were at times very bright to see and sometimes that were total darkness did create different feelings in him. The colors were also at times pleasing for him and at times created the feeling of aversion. So then Astir had to visit his fourth son. So his fourth son took the father to his strange house. In this house, Astir tasted fruits as sweet as nectar, things that were tasting good, like good food, good drinks. He also tasted some foods that were sour, bitter, salty, very spicy. Finally, Astir went to the house of the fifth son. Astir initially felt the fragrance of flowers and aromatic herbs. He also experienced some strong, stinky smell. So, some smells were enough to make him faint. So, in short, here also Astir experienced pleasure and pain. So, in all the five houses, some things pleased him and some things were not so pleasing. The sons were devoted to their father. They made their father experience all the things that they could offer, and he did not enjoy anything alone in his absence. And Astir not only enjoyed the stay in his son's house, but he also stole some things from there to share with his wife. Okay, so now let's analyze. So in the story, now each of the senses or sense tattvas are introduced in the order of their creation or manifestation in tantric philosophy. Astir first visited the house of his eldest son, and in this house he experienced sounds that produce both pleasant and unpleasant experience. So sound, shabda, is the first in the manifestation process, referred in the story as the eldest son. The organ for perceiving sound is the house of the eldest son. Different sounds produce different types of experience in the mind. The sequence of senses manifestation is shabda, sound, then sparsha, touch or feel, then rupa, color or form, then rasa, which is taste, and finally gandha, which is smell. The same sequence is followed in the story. So in the house of the second son, the experience relates to touch and feel, like soft cushion to sit and warm clothes. In the house of the third son, the experience relates to color and form, as in different colors we mentioned: white, yellow, brown. So big things, small things. So color and form are discussed in different shapes. In the house of the fourth son, the experience relates to taste. We have talked about sweet fruits, foods, as well as some of the items which were salty, spicy. And in the house of the fifth son, the experience relates to smell, fragrance of flowers as well as stinky smell. So Astir experienced pleasure and pain in all the five houses, or the mind experiences both pleasure and pain from the sensory inputs. The story mentions that the sons of Astir were devoted to their father. They made their father experience all the things that they could offer and did not enjoy anything alone in his absence. Mind as the principal tattva for operation of the senses is brought out in this statement. Next, an important remark is made by mentioning that Astir not only enjoyed the stay in his son's house, but he also stole some things from there to share with his wife. This corresponds to the mind Astir dwelling in the earlier experiences given by the senses through thoughts, Chabala, the mother. So this could take the form of daydreaming, dream while sleeping, or any other state where the person leaves the data or works on the data from an earlier experience. A deeper implication of this statement is to show that mind, along with thought, can trigger responses even without the actual involvement of senses. So, a person under hypnosis is able to experience the fragrance of a flower or the sensation of dipping in water without a physical flower to smell or getting any part of the body touching a drop of water. So that's what is explained by the last statement which we discussed, where Astir is actually taking things from the houses in order to share with his wife. We continue with the story narrated by Hemalekha. Hemalekha says that Chabala had a sister named Mahashana. Astir fell in love with Mahashana and married her. He brought many things to please her, but Mahashana finished it all in a moment. Astir and his 5 sons offered many things to Mahashana, but she was never satisfied and always wanted more. Later, Mahashana gave birth to 2 sons, who were named Jwalamukh and Nindyavrit. The 2 sons loved their mother. When Astir tried to spend time alone with Mahashana, it would anger Jwalamukh, and his wrathful flames used to burn Astir. When Astir tried to play with his younger son named Nindyavrit, everyone used to hate him. So Hemalekha says, my friend, the mother of Astir, got affected by her son's suffering. And she mentions that Hemalekha also felt sympathy for her friend. Okay, now let us analyze. So now the story introduces the reader to Chabala's sister named Mahashana, who gave birth to 2 kids named Jwalamukh and Nindyavrit. The characteristics of these 2 sons, as well as the character who is Chabala's sister, are outlined in the story. The key to the characters is given in chapter 8 of Tripura Rahasya. So the sister of Chabala is identified as desire, Asha in Sanskrit, Jwalamukh as anger, the first son, and the second son Nindyavrit as greed or lobe. So the characteristic of human desire, which is never fulfilled or satisfied, is evident from the name Mahashana, which means voracious. The story further says that Astir, the mind, and his 5 sons, the senses, offered many things to Mahashana. She consumed what was offered fast and did not feel satisfied. So, no matter what the mind and senses offer, there is no end to desire, or desire is never satisfied. Jwalamukh is identified as anger, and Nindyavrit is identified as greed. Both anger and greed are products of desire, the 2 sons of Mahashana. Anger occurs due to an event contrary to what a person desires, and greed occurs when there is desire to acquire more, showing how it is associated to desire, how anger as well as greed is a product of desire. Anger is evident in a person when his or her face turns red, and hence the name of the character as Jwalamukh or fire-faced. Greed is evident in a person from the bad attitude he or she shows, and hence the name of the character is Nindyavrit or bad attitude. In addition to the characteristics of desire, which we already discussed, the story also presents the characteristics of anger and greed. The wrathful flames of Jwalamukh burns Astir, which signifies how anger affects the mind adversely. Everyone used to hate Astir when he spends time with Nindyavrit, which shows how association with greed results in hate and dislike from others. 2 important points are communicated with the 2 statements from Hemalekha. My friend, mother of Astir, got affected by her son's suffering. I also felt sympathy for her. The first point is that the intellect, friend of Hemalekha, is clouded by the influence of its companions, Astir, Shunya, and others. So the key to change is to ensure that the intellect associates with good companions, which are product of knowledge or vidya, rather than products of ignorance, shunya or avidya. The second statement, I felt sympathy, clearly calls out that in the underlying philosophy, I, self or Atman, is also impacted by the changes affecting the body. We earlier saw Hemalega mentioned that I took care of the five sons, where Karta, the doer role, is called out. And in current statement, I felt sympathy, the Bhokta or enjoyer role is called out. Thanks for listening.